Shopping for cars online is slow. Checking all those different sites one by one, Auto Tempest doesn't like slow. That's why we sponsor NASCAR driver Chris Buescher in the number 17 Ford Mustang. It's also why we created a powerful search engine that will scour all the top car shopping sites, letting you search used car listings from across the internet in one search. Why waste time searching each site separately? Use Auto Tempest instead. Find all the cars. Autotempest.com. All the cars, one search.
Angie's List is now Angie, your home for everything home. With Angie, you could cross your next project off your to-do list before this ad is over. Just tell us what you need, and we'll handle the rest. Sending a top pro to get it done. Or browse reviews, compare quotes from pros, and connect instantly. All for free. For everything from routine maintenance to a dream remodel. Because however you want your project done, we'll get it done. Download the app or go to Angie.com. That's ANGI.com to get started.
You're listening to AM 1490 WWPR, Bradenton, Sarasota, Tampa Bay.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Cecilia Martin, and I'm your host for Team Leadership. I'm a best-selling author, international speaker, business owner, founder of a nonprofit, and your radio talk show host. This program focuses on leadership, education, family matters, and religion. Sometimes I'll have special guests on the show. Other times we'll just talk through some tough issues together and take a few phone calls. Either way, you're always welcome to send me your feedback. You can text or call 713-252-1978. That's 713-252-1978. Send me a text or leave me a voicemail. I'd love to know what's on your mind. By the way, I have student loans on my mind. I was thinking back to Y2K, when we thought the world was going to have an apocalyptic glitch of some sort, because the numbers on the little computer were rolling over from 1999 to year 2000. It's funny now, but at the time we were stocking up on non-perishables and other household stuff like toilet paper, paper towels, candles, medical stuff, water, tuna, beans, you name it. Okay. But really the biggest thing is that we thought our identity and information would be wiped out. And some even prayed that their student loans and credit card debt would be erased out of the system. And then nothing happened. It was totally anticlimactic. Nothing happened. Not even a little glitch, not a flicker with the lights, nothing. January 1st, 2000 came in like any other normal day. I know y'all remember. Nobody had their student debt erased. I won't even begin to tell you how much my education costs and the interest that came with it. And now I have a whole lot more debt. I can't even tell you how much debt I have with my daughter who's attending college, living her best broke life in New York City. But if I'm being honest, truth be told, I don't have any regrets about my student loans. Not one bit. Education was a game changer for me. And I hope whatever path you've taken, you don't have any regrets either. And if you have student debt, or if you're a parent, you just got to hang in there. In fact, I hope there are plenty of parents tuning in tonight because you are by far the most important person on the planet. I'm a mother of two, and it's an understatement to say that parenting is the hardest job in the world, and definitely not for the faint at heart. My special guest tonight, Dr. Jonathan Brice, is also a parent and the co-founder of School Equity Solutions. His firm is dedicated to eradicating discipline disparities, getting school districts out of desegregation cases, and improving culture and climate for students. Dr. Brice has 30 plus years of experience in education and was the U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of Education during the Obama administration. He also served as superintendent in major school districts and also other senior roles in the public school system. Hey, Dr. Brice, are you there?
I am here. How you doing, Dr. Martin?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm excellent. Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad. I'm so excited because, you know, the education system is off the rails. So we need to have a real in-depth conversation tonight.
Absolutely.
We all have questions. Now, you attended the University of Baltimore and Towson University. You had earned a bachelor and a master's degree. Then you went to Harvard and got another master's degree and added a doctorate degree. Am I correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Good grief. Did you work full time while you were doing it, or did you take a sabbatical? My goodness.
So I worked full time for the doctorate and the first master's and the bachelor's. And then when I was taking coursework at Harvard, I actually was doing that full time for 18 months, both the coursework and a 6-month internship as a superintendent's intern in a major school district in America.
My goodness gracious. Okay. You got student debt?
Come on now.
Okay, all right.
Listen, we don't even want to talk about it. But here's what I will say. I will say that people are arguing over whether it's the right thing or the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And I actually want to move beyond that.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about why in arguably the greatest country on the face of the earth, we are not providing free college education and post-secondary training, whether it be a community college, a trade school, a 4-year school, to state schools for everybody that is willing and performs at a satisfactory level. Like,
exactly.
Explain to me why we're not doing that. And the only thing that I can think about is it's another issue related to equity and trying to further exacerbate the haves versus the have-nots.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. I think I was watching a special the other day, and if I'm not mistaken, in Taiwan, they have free college, right?
Yep.
And the difference is that they actually are pretty much guaranteed work afterwards. Mm-hmm. I think one of the biggest frustrations here in the U.S. is that it seems like those of us who go to college, you know, we're able to earn, you know, make a good living, and then we still have to spend half of our life paying the debt back. And it's not that you don't want to pay it back. Yep. It's just the interest. Like,
absolutely.
It's like, absolutely. It's so punitive. It's like, my goodness, and we're the taxpayers. Like we're carrying the load of so many other things, you know, and like you said, it's just another of the have and the have nots. And yeah.
I actually think that in the next 10 years, we are likely to see some type of wholesale revision to the cost, both the cost of college education and opening up access to college education at the community college level and at the state university level for free for students if they are willing to provide some level of return service to our communities. Yeah. And so almost like a national service corps.
Wow. Now that sounds interesting.
Yep. And I think, you know, one of President Biden's platforms was actually free community college for all. Mm-hmm. And there are some states that have existing experiments that are working fairly well. Namely, Tennessee has an experiment where they are providing free community college education to Tennessee residents. Those
Mm.
residents then have a responsibility to provide some type of service either back to the state of Tennessee, the community, or be employed by a Tennessee employer.
So they are investing from within.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's the smart play. And increasingly, as the age of the American workforce gets older
Yeah.
and there are fewer new employees to join the workforce, it is something that we're absolutely going to need to do, as well as retrain our workforce because of the new technology that's coming on board. Just as an example, electric cars,
Yeah.
the huge amount of uh, stations that are going to be needed in places to fuel or to not fuel, but to actually plug up your electric cars. All of those things are going to require electricians and other craftsmen, craftspersons to do that work.
Yeah, I think you're right. The workforce in general is going to need to be retrained to some extent. Especially, we saw it with COVID, with technology, and especially teachers in education. And the millennials, they aren't having it. They're just like, if I can't work from home, too bad.
Absolutely.
They're not
Absolutely.
even thinking about a 401k, a 403b, a Roth, or anything. It's just they understand that in their mind, they believe it just doesn't take all of that. Like they can be just as effective, working off site or in a park.
Well, and if there's anything that the pandemic, right, and there are a whole bunch of lessons that we can take, but one of those lessons, I think clearly, is with the advent of modern technology,
Mm-hmm.
it is not only feasible, but it actually might increase productivity
Mm-hmm.
for some workers to have some sort of hybrid
Yeah.
work from, remote work from home, show up in the office a couple of times a month, some sort of schedule. I think the other thing that is little understood, but is part of the research base that is emerging, is the benefit to employers in reduced operating costs, lower
Yeah.
overhead. They don't need as many office buildings.
For
You
sure.
don't need as much equipment to furnish for new employees. So, if possible, it could be a win-win for everyone.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. I know businesses save or large corporations saved a ton of money. In some
Absolutely.
regards, on one end, it kind of balanced out. Now, what do you think about students and teachers? Because we saw many teachers struggled with technology or didn't have any, the state of the art technology that's being used in some places. Some of the public school systems didn't have, they were not set up for that. Okay. And then some of the older students, like my daughter who's in high school, she did well at home, but I am an educator. So
Mm-hmm.
I throw that in as a caveat. But do you think a hybrid model, at least for high school students, should stay in place?
So I absolutely do. And as a matter of fact, I was speaking to approximately 80 central office and principals a couple of weeks ago in Massachusetts. And one of the things that I said to them was to expect almost every school system and high school in America to, within 10 years, to have an existing hybrid in-person learning system, because there are some students that absolutely thrived
Yeah.
being virtual in that hybrid model. A lot of times it's students that had, more or higher level academic skills. Some students just like the fact that they could sort of get up in the morning, roll out of bed, and roll into
Yeah.
class. There are other students who had school phobia and anxiety, and the fact that they didn't have to deal with the whole social milieu that
Mm-hmm.
is school allowed them to just focus on academics. Having said that, I do think for middle school and elementary students, a hybrid structure is problematic just because the younger students are not as independent as the high school students are. And then I think the first thing you mentioned is the issue of equity. We know that in our country, all school systems and all areas are not created equal. And so throughout the pandemic, largely urban central city districts, largely rural districts, both had technology problems. The large urbans, typically students didn't have free Wi-Fi, high-speed Wi-Fi. Yeah. And in the rural, and oftentimes they didn't have the devices. And then in the rural, they may have had the devices, but they didn't have the free high-speed Wi-Fi. Right. And so those are things that the Department of Education, as well as the president, I think are very focused on in their infrastructure bill, as well as some of the other legislation that they've passed in the last 2 years.
Yeah, I think it's important because it has to be equitable. That's the key. My daughter, one of my daughters, they had a laptop since they were in middle school. And then when the pandemic came, by that time she was going into high school. And then there were many students, like you said, who didn't have a laptop. And I'm like, how was that possible? I just assumed pretty much all districts were distributing laptops at that point because books are non-existent. Yeah. My kids haven't had a book from public schools since I don't know when, but they did have laptops.
So what was interesting is, and I was a sitting superintendent at the time, and so my district had about 6,300 students, but we were full one-to-one devices at the high school level. Mm-hmm. What we did was we very quickly placed an order and purchased an additional 3,000 devices so that we could go one-to-one K to 12. We gave everybody devices, and then we also bought hotspots, and the state Department of Education gave us hotspots so that students would have the ability to use the devices because they had hotspots. It really is an equity play. Thankfully, we had the resource with which to do that, but many of the larger districts and the rural districts just did not have that resource.
Yeah. I want to go back to something you said about socialization because, like you said, the little ones, they need more support and structure, but they also need that socializing piece is what really helps them to grow as individuals and to be connected and to learn. They learn through play, they learn through sharing and things of that nature. But where do the parents fit into all of this?
Well, I actually think parents are, and my belief is that parents are the first teachers, and it is the responsibility of educators, both at the school level, at the district level, to create conditions that invite parents in to see the process, to know and to understand what their young people are expected to learn and to be able to do. And unfortunately, what we find is that there are many school environments where parents do not feel welcomed. They do not feel included in the decision-making process. And they wonder why education looks and feels different than when they were in school. And we and education have not done an effective job of explaining why education had to evolve, why it looks different, and how it's going to help their students as they graduate and go into the world of post-secondary work and career. And so we just need to do better. But for parents, it is critically...
I want to play devil's advocate just a little bit because I know you can handle it.
Yep.
So let's say, first, the term parents may seem a little bit archaic in the sense that when I was growing up, my parents were teens and my brother was the authority figure at school. Okay. Because we're 13 months apart. So we use the term parents, but the family dynamics is a little different. And I think we should say family engagement, one. But you're right in the sense that parents or family members don't feel welcome. And then when they are there, there's so much educational jargon. They feel isolated. And it doesn't matter. What I've seen is that it doesn't matter if they are high income parents or low income parents. They don't understand the inner workings of the school system. So to say that they should be the first teachers, it's like saying that they should be the first medical doctor, because they're putting band-aids on, and they don't know what they don't know. And I'm gonna give you an example. I did an extensive work when I worked at Johns Hopkins University in family and community engagement. And there is a research-based approach to engaging families or parents or guardians within the system. But I'll never forget a friend of mine who worked for the FBI when Common Core was being implemented. And she called me. She had kids who were young and in school. And she called me and she said, they're talking about Common Core, but I don't understand it. Is this something I should be worried about? And I tried to explain it to her. And I said, no, absolutely not. And I explained to her what the curriculum was. But at that moment, the light bulb went off for me that it doesn't matter necessarily what your status is as a parent. If you just don't know what you don't know. And like you said, how can schools sort of decode this barrier that's there, this invisible barrier with parents and teachers, so that parents can legitimately understand and not just be there to check the box or be there to fill the seat or be there to complete the paperwork. Mm-hmm. How can parents truly be engaged in the education process?
Well, I think there are two things. When I was at the Department of Education, one of the areas of my responsibility was family and community engagement. Mm-hmm. And what we used was something called the dual capacity framework. It was co-authored by Karen Mapp, who is a senior lecturer at the Graduate School of Education, right? Yeah. And Karen was on my committee. But what the dual capacity framework in schools that have been educated in its use, the focus is on being open and inclusive and welcoming to family and the broader community. So what that means is whether you are being raised by biological parents, being raised by your grandmother in foster care, what matters is that the person, the adult in your life is welcome in the building, where we are focused on sharing the richness of your culture. Yes. Where, if you are a non-English speaker, there is someone that is able to provide information in your native language so that you are aware of the expectations and provided support. So I do go back to parents and education. Folks in public school, sometimes we get it wrong in the sense thinking that students come to us and they are blank slates, right? What do they call that? Tabula rasa.
The tabula rasa, yeah.
Right. The real issue is that parents send us their very best. Right. Yes, and we had a former boss, right, who used to say that all the time. Right. Parents send us their very best. It is up to us to find ways to reach out to them and to help them, those students, become successful. And so openness, embracing differences in culture, making sure that we are providing acknowledgement about what students are to learn and to be able to do. And then finally, when parents have a concern, we take that concern, we take it we answer it and address it quickly, as well as we take it seriously. And I think when I talk to parents, even now in working in various districts, and when I'm around and I see parents, parents remark that they are happy or that they are distressed when their concerns are not taken seriously and addressed as quickly as possible. So there's a customer service aspect to this as well.
Absolutely. You nailed it with the customer service, because, parents want to be helped with any issue that's on the table. And I look at parents as the manager of a child's education and the teacher as the leader. So the manager comes in to make sure that the process is happening, and how can I help? Because the teacher has the bigger vision of what the student needs, because they are assessing them. They know what they know and what they don't know, and they're helping them grow in their education. And I really wish parents and teachers would see themselves, as allies versus on the opposite end of the spectrum. And then sometimes you have the helicopter parents who, they're running teachers off, because they do feel like they know it all, but yet they're not an educator,
So, and you know what? In my experience, I've seen both. And I think both, that whole continuum from helicopter parents who are heavily involved and may not necessarily have the right intention, to parents who appear not to be involved at all.
Sure.
But I say this all the time. So my father was heavily involved in my education. I do not believe that my father ever attended a PTA meeting.
Right.
And the reason why is my father worked the 4 to 12 shift at a local factory. And so he was not able to get off. And so one of the things that schools need to do, and I think the pandemic helped with that, is make information sharing and PTA, PTO meetings more accessible by having them online, where parents can Zoom in and you can ask questions, or having them on Saturday morning, or having them right before some type. I've seen schools that have them right before like a talent show or some musical, like the winter musical. They all have a PTO meeting. Come 30 minutes early. Those are the types of things that are welcoming and supportive of families and community.
Absolutely. Now you hit the nail on the head right there, because there are multiple ways that parents can be involved, and that's what schools and teachers need to understand. And as long as that parent is willing to be an ally and a partner, we should let them in any way possible that they can participate. And it doesn't have to look the same, like the PTO leader or the PTA leader or the soccer mom, for that matter.
Correct.
Like, all parents, like you said, want the best for their kids. My mom, she was a young mom, but she made it clear to me and my brother, you're going to graduate. And when the school called, because I was the one always in trouble, my brother had a halo over his head. But, when they called, she was there. I was wrong. I was getting it, and I was going to get back in school, and I was going to finish. So if for parents who are listening, if you can't do anything else, have a consistent message about the importance of education. Absolutely. And the importance of them finishing their course.
Absolutely.
That's the main thing, because a lot of parents are really fearful now, especially after experiencing themselves having to teach or monitor their teaching, the kids, what they were learning, or having to leave them MIA, while they go to work. They didn't have a choice.
Correct.
So we really have to do better with, I love the idea of having the Zoom meetings, making everything as a hybrid, at least for parents, so they can be accessible to information no matter where they are.
That is correct.
Yeah, that's golden. That's golden. Now, during the Obama administration, I remember that the primary focus was school improvement grants, as well as Race to the Top programs. And there was there was a moderate demonstration of progress. And under POTUS 45, the focus was expanding school vouchers. Now, regardless of funding or federal or local control, why can't we seem to make sustainable progress in the public school system?
Well, I actually think that's an interesting question. Okay. I think if you look at the lifespan of American public education, what you see is progress. Okay. One of the things that I can tell you and tell your listeners is that in 1900, the United States graduation rate was 6%. That is 6%. 94% of students did not graduate, and I'm certain that many African Americans and Native Americans and other people new to the country, immigrants as well as females, were not a part of that 6% and likely not a part of the other 94%. In 2018-19, the United States graduation rate is 80 or was 86%. And so there has been some significant progress over the course of the last, 120 years in terms of building high school graduates. Now, here's the problem. So that's the good news. The bad news is that there is a level of disparate outcomes based on ethnicity, based on race, based on disability, English language learner, based on poverty, urban versus suburban versus rural. And so those are the things that American public education has not solved. And the other thing I would mention is that the goalposts keep moving. So in 1900, the United States was largely an agrarian society. And hence the need for, a 180-day calendar so that students could be out during the summer. Why? Because they were going to be in the fields, harvesting and things like that. We then shifted to an industrial society, and we needed more students to be able to work in factories. Hence, the factory model of education in high schools. And we started churning out more graduates that had technical skills that were able to go to work in factories. You think about the GI Bill that occurred, right? That occurred right after World War II. And you now have more people that not only graduated from high school, but now are also going into college. And the GI Bill is credited as being one of the central tenets of American prosperity over the last 70 years. And now, yep, right. And now, as I am, and now here's the problem for education, American public education. The goalposts have changed. We are now evolving from an industrial society to a technological society. The skills that students need have changed. We no longer only need foundational skills. It is no longer enough just to read and to be able to do basic mathematics and to write. You now need to do those things, but also analyze information, analyze the source of the information, be able to critique it, be able to then use that information as it pertains to technology. And it is that shift that is making it really difficult for a lot of public schools and school districts because they are sort of on the wrong side of that particular slope. And so they've got to get over the crest and get on the side where they are preparing young people to fully participate in the next 80 years of American society. So my recommendation, every American high school student needs to learn how to code. It is no longer a luxury. It is absolutely a necessity that they have the basic rudimentary understanding of coding because they're going to work with technology. They're going to need it.
Yeah, I agree. Now, you're talking about coding, you're getting into some deep water because who's going to teach them? We have a national teacher crisis. How in the world, especially in the areas of science, technology, engineering, and math? So how in the world can we incentivize people into the field? Because nationally, the teachers just, the numbers don't add up.
No, the numbers don't add up. People do not understand how complicated teaching is. And I tell people this all the time. The toughest job in any school system, anywhere in America, is being a classroom teacher, walking into class every day with a great lesson. And now you have, if you're an elementary teacher, you've got your 25 kids. If you're a middle or high school teacher, you're seeing anywhere from 90 to 150 students per day. And any one student can completely disrupt the flow of that lesson. And so it is the most complicated job in education. And so my solution, which has, there are some policy makers that are starting to have this conversation, and we've seen an example of it in the private sector or the nonprofit sector, but it needs to now move to the Department of Education and future administrations. They need to start a national teacher corps. They need to pay to send teachers to state schools, and if they agree to attend the state school and to major in a subject area and then get the education credential, they owe 5 years of service in a school district.
Wow.
And once that 5 years is over, then they're free to leave and to go and do something else. And so I think it would solve a couple of issues. One, it would pay for college because it would, there would no longer be a need for student loans and things like that. So I'm sure the student loan service providers and legislators who are taking money from them would be opposed to that.
Yeah.
But the other thing that it would do is it would shore up what I think is one of the most significant issues, which is teachers leaving the field. So it's bad that we can't get some teachers, but once we get teachers, oftentimes they leave within the first 3 years. If we could extend that by another 2 years, if we could extend it even to 7 years, and maybe if you're willing to get a master's degree, you have to give us 7 years. If we can keep someone for 7 years, it is likely that that individual is no longer a novice teacher, but is now an experienced, bordering on master teacher, and is likely to stay in the field. And I think that's how we solve it.
That sounds like a great idea. I think they're going to need to work out the kinks of the penalty if someone breaks a contract early. And I'm sure you guys will think through that. But I think also, in addition, that sounds like an excellent plan. And they need to pay teachers more. Like you said, there isn't a person on this earth that becomes anything without passing through the hands of an educator.
Correct.
Not a president, not an astronaut, not a doctor. We all pass through the hands of an educator. So why aren't they need to be compensated at the same rate as a medical doctor, as far as I'm concerned.
So it's interesting. And I actually have a different perspective on that.
Okay.
And so my perspective on teacher pay is that there are some states where the average teacher is, let me give you two, like the beginning teachers, there are some states like Maryland where beginning teachers start at $50,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
That's not bad for a 4-year degree.
Yeah, I started higher than that because I taught special ed in Maryland.
See, there it is. Right?
Yeah, the first year in my 20s, I was making real good.
Right.
Really good money. I was making more than that.
Right. Think about this. There are also teachers that have been teaching 20 years, have a master's degree, that are making 6 figures, right?
True.
In some districts in Maryland.
That's true.
But I have friends who are superintendents in Arizona and New Mexico where starting teacher pay is $32,000 a year.
What?
And they max at 65.
What?
That's the problem. We need to equalize.
Goodness gracious.
Equalize teacher salaries across the country and elevate, not decrease, those states that have a higher cost of living and where teachers are making more. Yeah,
I mean, but the cost of living too in Maryland is much higher than, some of those states that you mentioned. So I can see it. First of all, I don't think it's right. I don't know why anybody should be paid $32,000 teaching no matter where you live.
Correct.
It doesn't matter if you lived in the Amazons. Like, it's hard work. It never ends. And the ones who are in the classroom who are there, they want to be there.
Absolutely.
They really do. Most teachers leave because of the system, not because of the kids.
Yep.
Yeah.
They leave because, right. And it's interesting that you say that, because most of the research about the reasons why teachers leave, teacher salary is not the first issue. The issue typically is that they are concerned about the culture and climate in the building, created by principals and other administrators, and whether or not they are allowed to practice their craft and to develop as professionals, and are being treated as professionals.
Well, speaking of culture and climate, you wrote a paper while you were at Harvard on engaging or emotionally engaging African American males in the context of academics and success. What does that mean to emotionally engage African American males? And what were some of your findings?
Yeah, so that was the basis for my dissertation. And what I did was I first and foremost wanted to figure out how I could assist the field in thinking about how we educate Black boys, right? As an African American male, right, I know how strong of an influence my parents and my extended family and family friends were, and my peer group and my friend's mom. And what I wanted was, what's the secret sauce? What does it take to make African American males successful, not just in Baltimore where I grew up, but all across the country? And I also wanted to fight against what I consider to be very pernicious stereotypes that really, people talk about, oh, there are more Black males in prison than in college. That's a lie. All right. They're actually, and so the last year for the data that I have is 2009. I wrote my dissertation right after that. So at the time, there were 1.2 African American males in colleges and universities all over this country, and there were roughly 800,000 African American males in jails and prisons. Now, clearly, 800,000 African American males in jails and prison was 800,000 too many. And as a society, we need to do better. But just to share that it is a stereotype that there are more Black men in prison than in college, I think is eye-opening. So what's the secret? How do we help African American males to be successful in our schools? So there were a couple of things that came out of my very limited study, but that are applicable to schools and to school districts. So number one is the students talked about being academically challenged. They liked it when the work they were receiving was challenging. It required them to think, required them to raise their level of engagement, right? They needed to up their game. But they also talked about the support and the relationship they received from caring, committed teachers. So you can have high standards as long as you've got teachers that have built positive relationships with our young people and they have support. There are strategies and things in place that allow them, when they struggle, to know that they can go and get help. Another point that they talked about was having a peer group. And that's interesting because the College Board and the ACT, oftentimes, especially at the high school, they would go in and they would do assessments of the demographics of their courses. And they found that African American males were significantly underrepresented, almost non-existent in many of the courses. And so what districts started doing is they started bringing in African American males in peer groups. So it cuts down on that isolation. You now have that study partner and group of people that you can look to. They look like the students that they represent. I know that in Baltimore City, one of the things that we attempted to do was to expand the peer group. And it's funny because I've got a T-shirt from that time that says, "This is what AP looks like. This is what advanced placement looks like." We need to expand the peer group. And then here's the last thing. They recognized that they couldn't do it without having family and community support and participation in extracurricular activities, which help to keep their focus on positive things and keep them away from negative things. So those are the real, three big takeaways from my study. And I can tell you that in the work that I'm currently doing, when we walk into schools and we start having conversations with administrators, those are the types of things that administrators are trying to put in place to help young African-American males become academically successful.
Okay, so you need a rigorous curriculum and to be academically challenged. You need caring teachers, peer groups, and family and community support. Isn't that what all kids need? Is the focus now just for African-American males? And if so, why that concentration versus taking this sort of model and framework across all districts or primarily urban districts?
So it's interesting. I think broadly, all kids need some of the same things, but we also know that African-American males have been unduly targeted by school structures that penalize them. And I could actually say the same for males in general, but African Americans in particular, for behaviors, for rambunctiousness that is seen as being disrespectful, insubordinate, refusing to sit down, refusing to follow directions, which then leads to exclusionary discipline policies and practices that penalize African Americans and cause them to disengage from school. So while I think all students need some of the things that I mentioned, it is clear that African American males in our public schools need not just a little bit more, they need much more because the structures are unfortunately working against them. And in a lot of the schools that we work with, part of what we're tasked with doing is helping to reform their discipline policies and practices, which unfairly and unduly target African American males, and to increase social emotional learning opportunities and strategies, because when students feel connected to that teacher, when they feel connected to the building, they show up every day, they show up ready, they're willing to learn, and they're willing to engage because they've got a positive relationship with the teacher.
Now, do you think it'd be better if African American males went to an all boys school?
Do I think it would be better?
Yeah.
Here's what I would tell you. Some of the results that we're seeing from gender-specific schools that serve a largely African-American male student population are exceptional. And I would say I'm not one to require, but I certainly believe that it is a viable option. The early indication is that it is making some great strides in helping African American males to be successful, and it is something that we should have as an option.
I would co-sign on that too. I really would. I agree with what you're saying, because I think that they have been, like you said, excluded in so many other ways. I think that having sort of a concentrated effort for them, and they do thrive in a culture where they're understood, and where the expectation is high.
Absolutely.
And I remember when I taught high school long time ago, I mean, like you said, I had like 50, 60 kids in my class. Like, in the city, it was 900 ninth graders in the building alone. So I think they could definitely benefit from sort of that intense focus where they're understood and they can sort of be expressive.
Yep.
In their thoughts and how they learn. Yeah. Now,
Absolutely.
I don't want to let you go before I hear about school equity solutions. Tell us about that and what you all do and how districts can reach out to you if they need you.
Absolutely. So, School Equity Solutions is a firm that I started with my partner, Eric Carlton. We've known each other. Wow, it's funny. So, we've known each other since undergrad. We went to undergrad together.
Nice.
We worked together in Baltimore County. He was the principal, I was one of his assistant principals. And our firm has a focus on doing a couple of things. So, it provides leadership coaching primarily in the realm of student services. So we provide coaching and support and professional development for discipline reform, for social emotional learning. We help provide staff with the ability to become key partners in reducing discipline disparities. And one of the things that we find in our work is that almost any school and school district you go to, African American males, and then increasingly African American females are penalized more and more severely for infractions than their non-African American peers. And so what we help to do is to highlight that and then help schools to find remedies and strategies to reduce it. And part of the reason why is because you need students in class in order to learn.
That's
and
right.
We have to help school staff that struggle with classroom management, struggle with building relationships with kids. We have to help kids to create a sense of belonging to the school and to one caring, committed adult. And we've been able to do that in several districts.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. And do you stay the course with them, not just doing training and development and workshops and peer learning, but how long do you commit? Do you stay with them for a year, help them create a plan, and do you come and monitor and give feedback? What does it look like a little bit in real time?
Yeah, so in real time, we do all of those things. So we start with an analysis of the data, and then what makes us different from other firms that might occupy this space is that we believe in on-site conversations and interviews with district superintendents and school principals. And then and only then do we create a plan, and we work that plan with schools over a period of years, all with the goal of creating a process where eventually we have built capacity within the school and the school district to be able to self-monitor and correct any disparities that they see so that student performance increases. And so that has been our work, and it's shown some promising early wins.
Wow, it sounds like you guys are the folks to contact. Schools need that desperately, school districts all across the country. How can they reach out to you if they want to get in touch?
Absolutely. So they can reach out to schoolequitysolutions.com, which is our website. That's schoolequitysolutions.com. And they can also call me. My number is 410-336-1265. That is 410-336-1265.
Okay, now I hope you cleared that with Miss Crystal, your lovely wife. That's not
So,
your person.
you know what she would say? Take those calls and find out how you can help those companies and those
Wonderful.
schools to be successful.
Wonderful. You guys have a blended family. Is that correct? Of 5?
That is correct.
And
So
what are their
it's
ages?
hold on. So it's 5. So like 31, 27, 24, 22, and 16. But no. Those are the kids. Let's talk about the grandkids.
Oh my
All right.
gosh.
5, 3, 2, and I want to say Kobe is Kobe, is she 13 months?
Oh my God.
Right? And so let me just tell
They're
you,
steppers. Oh my gosh.
yeah, like listen, it's amazing. And I'll tell you that one of the things that you realize is that there's an ebb and flow to this. As a
Mm-hmm.
parent, you are so focused on work, you're so focused on getting it right that maybe you don't have the time to sit with your kids all the time. Whereas as a grandparent, you're like, okay, let's sit down. Yep, we're gonna do this. This is what we're gonna do. And so it just shows that you're at a different place in your life.
Sure.
But yeah, the blended family. I will tell anybody. I absolutely prayed for a huge family. It's exactly what I've gotten. And it comes with challenges. But there
Mm-hmm.
really isn't a day that goes by that someone in the family doesn't give me reason to smile. And so I'm very thankful for that.
That is so beautiful. And I want to tell you that I can't appreciate you enough for talking to us tonight. We'll have to have you back. U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of Education under the Obama administration, Dr. Jonathan Brice. I can't thank you enough. And also, I want to tell you and Crystal and the listeners that this weekend is National Cinema Day on Saturday, September the 3rd.
Okay.
And you can go movie hopping for $3.
Oh, come on now.
Yeah.
Come on
Oh,
now.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
me, my mom, and my daughter, we already have our plans. We're going to be movie hopping all day Saturday.
You know what? Okay, so let's talk about real quick. They're just trying to get people back in the movies, right? Because people are so like they're just streaming everything. Like
Yeah,
I haven't seen Top Gun Maverick, right?
What?
But I can stream it. Exactly. Exactly.
Dr. Brice, first of all, you have to see Top Gun Maverick. Let me tell you that. But let me tell you another surprise that you have to see, which is Elvis.
I haven't seen it yet.
It was wonderful. If they don't get an Oscar, I don't know what they're doing, at the Academy, because it is surprisingly so well developed and the cinematography is astounding. So please see Elvis. See Jurassic World if you haven't seen it.
I have seen that.
Yeah, it was a little, it was like a family reunion of the folks, but it was
exactly.
It fell short for me. But Top Gun Maverick, yeah, go get your $3 ticket, get your $3 popcorn, and your $3 fries,
but see, that's the problem. The ticket is $3, but all the goodies come to $12.
Yeah, try 20.
Exactly.
Yeah, try 20. Oh gosh, thank you again. We're wrapping up.
Thank you very much for your time. It's great. And by the way, let me just tell you how just proud and in awe I am of you and the work that you're doing all around. I look, and next thing you know, you're in like Dubai, and you're all over the place, and you're just doing phenomenal work. And so I'm so thankful for the opportunity, but most of all, thankful for the work that you're doing, because it's building better leaders. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm humbled, to say the least. I am so humbled. Thank you all for listening tonight. Make sure you tune in next week. We're going to have a former VP of Syracuse College turned headhunter. So if you want to know why you may be still sitting at the kiddie table when it comes to your profession, you don't want to miss what Dr. Davis has to say. Again, she's also a headhunter, so she'll tell you some tips to land that executive job, and you can kind of see if you have what it takes. You'll hear her personal journey and story of why she came out of higher ed to now find and recruit great talent. Thank you for joining me for this hour of power, and as always, thank you for being a team player. Please don't forget, it's movie weekend, Saturday, September the 3rd. Go to Cinemark or AMC Theaters, $3, Movie Hop. Go see everything that you wanted to see. Just make a day of it. Okay? Good night, folks.